Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Foxify Radio podcast. Today we have with us two of the team members from Cardinal House, Chris and Jojo. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You're welcome. It's good to have you both here. How many are there of you in total in Cardinal House?
Now we're increasing the team, but of the core team members, we have 7 right now.
7. Cool. And you've been going for how long?
Since March, so almost a year now, almost at that year-long anniversary.
Yeah, because you started about the same time as MDB, didn't you? Actually, I remember. Mm-hmm. We were both quite new at the same time.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Cool. So for anyone listening that might not have heard of Cardinal House, could you give us a bit of an overview about what it is, what you guys do?
Yeah, Jojo, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so I could start here. Our vision has really changed since our inception.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to focus more on building a community around Web3 entrepreneurship and showcasing how you can launch a successful business in the Web3 space by being a successful business ourselves. So we're really documenting our journey through content, launching a successful business, and then showcasing other entrepreneurs out there that they can start their own successful businesses.
Yeah, like you say, you have evolved actually, haven't you, since you first started? Talk us through that. What was the decision making behind that, or was it sort of a natural sort of evolution? Why the pivot?
Chris, you wanna take this one?
Man, give me the hard ones. Yeah, so so we started off in March, right? Kind of the tail end of, it was like catching the very, very last wind of any kind of bull run, right? And things started getting a lot more quiet in the Discord DeFi, realm. And that, I think, is one of the biggest troubles that we had in the beginning, is trying to grow grow an audience and a community on a platform that's not meant to grow. Discord is meant to connect, but not to go out and establish, your credibility and go out and meet new people. That's why it's, everything is so closed. And we started there and we did fairly decently. It took a long time to do that, though. It was a long grind for that. And we, over time, just started to learn and figure out that was probably not the most optimal decision. And it just came from lack of experience. We have a very young team, right? So coming into this, just kind of learning as we went. And then we started to experiment with other avenues like Twitter and things like that. And that's kind of how we got into, and I want to say that's one of the pieces. We've always been very, very fond of entrepreneurship and always had it in our minds that we want to have this as a mission to help young entrepreneurs succeed. But that's how we started getting along the Twitter side. And that's really where we're, capturing a lot of the attention now and have had our biggest growth spurts. Jojo, you want to chat a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think what we've modeled our business after is people like Alex Hormozi or Gary Vee, who have a content empire, and they use that content to then drive their business to succeed on an even greater level. And I think we've taken so much from the content they put out and applied it into our business. And we've realized, wow, like that's huge. Being able to have access to YouTube and to hear what these guys have said and people who have actually done it before, who are sharing you knowledge that actually works. So we're like, if we can do that for the Web3 space, become a Web3 entrepreneur thought leader, something that hasn't really been done yet. Right? There's like BitBoy Crypto and there's all these big influencers, but no one is really hitting you with business, right? Like hitting you with, here's what you need to do to launch a Web3 business, because it's not exactly the same as Web2. And we kind of want to highlight those differences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned Gary Vee as an inspiration. Like he's insane, isn't he? He's so like articulate. I love his podcast. Like I listen to his podcast all the time when I walk my dog. And they're just so, they're inspiring without being like, silly or out of reach. What he says is always really real. He's like very real talk. He's very straight. And I think, he's a great point, to start from. Absolutely. If you're wanting to like grow your business or what have you, he's great to listen to. Yes, it's super interesting that you mentioned him. So how are you finding the Twitter space? Obviously, I feel like the most sort of like Web3 natives are on Twitter. Like that is where you need to be in terms of social media. How are you finding it?
Yeah, so I'll just go back 3 months, right? 3 months ago, I decided to make the transition to learning the Twitter platform. And I spent probably 12 to 14 hours a day on Twitter, just trying to grow us.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was meeting all these people and I was getting follows from, Gary V, NFT God, all these people that are pretty large influencers on Twitter who know how to capture attention and then drive that to a specific place. And I'm like, I want to study these guys and learn from them. So I spent another 2-3 months just studying them. And it got to the point where now we were getting 50 followers a day just organically by creating content, engaging with other people's content. And I really just feel like I have a strategy now that can be replicated consistently with results. And that's kind of led us to our business model as far as offering that as a service for our branding agency. I think immersing myself in it has really led to growth. So I'm really excited. If you have any specific questions, I'm down to answer. I just don't want to go too far into the weeds.
No.
Guys.
So do you manage Twitter accounts for other Web3 businesses, or do you offer like just more guidance? How does that work?
Chris, I'll let you run through this. You're an expert at this talk.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of go through exactly what it is we do. But yeah, there's a couple pieces that we do. We do the management. That is like the core service. Is we go in, we create content for you, we engage with your possible community, right? And that means not just like replying to people on Twitter. Like you'll have a bunch of management agencies that are, hey, we just put out a couple pieces of content a day, and that's kind of all the deliverables go, or as far as they go. I've never seen anything along the lines of what we're doing for our own brand in as far as providing that as a service. People don't do it for their own companies, let alone for others, and so you have social media management agencies that don't go in and actually go in and reply to other people's content and try and build relationships with people. So the way we like to look at it, there's 3 pieces. 1, capture attention. That's number 1, right? You have to hit that attention piece. If you don't, you're competing with everyone out there putting content, not just people in your niche, because there's always something more interesting to go consume. And so you have to make that, that engaging content. So capturing attention, building relationships, and then 3rd is monetize. And a lot of people don't know how to capture attention. For 1, they just put out advertisements over and over, and you're tiring out your community on how all that works. Number 2 is you have that building relationship piece, which, like I said, a lot of that happens through replying and engaging with others. People don't want to just sit here and, unless you are a figure like Gary Vee at this point, but he spent years, 7 hours a day, just replying to people. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's really going through building those relationships for, from the ground up. And then lastly, monetizing. Nobody can promise, as far as social media goes, that they're going to help you monetize. And that's something we're trying to flip on its head and show that, hey, building your brand is going to help you monetize. Like if Mr. Beast launched and he's probably one of the best examples, if not the best example for it. But if he launches a business now, it's instantly a multi-million-dollar business, right? Because he has that brand behind it. People know who he is, what he stands for, and what he does, and what he's all about. So I think a lot of people forget about those pieces. But that's something we're really trying to bring back into allowing businesses to have this connection, build this relationship. And right now, Discord is a place to do that for sure. But if you could do that on Twitter, I mean, I think everyone can agree that'd be a little bit more effective. 1, the whole niche, the whole crypto Twitter has blown up in the past several months. And then 2, it's just a much easier platform to actually find growth on and meet new users and that kind of thing. But yeah, so we go in, we write tweets for people. We'll reply to others. We scheduled, a Twitter space every month or every week. And so it's really about that constant brand awareness and actually building up that reputation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so I've worked in social media now for probably coming on 7 years-ish. And yeah, a long time. And my niche was always Instagram. That was where I started. And I know Instagram inside out, and I had to learn to a little bit, to be fair, when moving over to this space, because you just don't, people that are into Web3 or DeFi or crypto, they're not really on Instagram. They're not in the same way. They don't use it for that. So I had to learn Twitter myself. I'd used it sort of as a really casual user. But I think, like you say, the key is that relationship building. It's that engaging. And if you just put a tweet out and, you might use a few relevant hashtags or whatever, but if you're not actually engaging with your audience, you're not replying to people, you're not replying to, other people, and, they might not follow you yet, but, you can reply to them. That for me is key. And I've spoken to so many people And they're like, oh, the algorithm, it's the algorithm. I can't do anything because of the algorithm. I'm like, your engagement isn't because of the algorithm, right? It's because you need to dedicate time. I was actually listening to a Gary Vee podcast, funnily enough, this morning, and he said how people think that, you make the content and that's it. And he said the content is actually in the beginning of the journey, right? It's the very first thing that you do, and then you have to do everything else around it, where, such as engagement. So, I think it's absolutely crucial these days, particularly since they changed from years ago now, but from chronological order to a more sort of content-based algorithm. You need to spend more time than just, writing a tweet and posting it and then turning it off and hoping someone sees it,
I think the harsh reality is that no one's going to consume your content when you're first starting on Twitter. And that's what you start to realize is if you want to build repetitive consumption of your content, you need to go out and repetitively engage with others, right? It's not a one-way street. And that took a while for me to realize. And then once I started doing that, and I spent probably 10 hours a day just replying, we grew 1,000 followers organically in a month. And we got to 1,200. And as soon as I stopped doing that, because now I'm getting hit with all these other tasks of like, now I got to train and I got to manage other people. And I'm like, I see that it stops, right? You're like, as soon as you stop that secret sauce, like all of a sudden the engagement drops, the growth drops. And it's like, well, I think we found what works.
Yeah, definitely. You're absolutely right. And I do feel like when you take a few days off, you then almost have to start from the beginning. You lose that momentum. So it is something that's so important to keep going with. And it is boring sometimes, like, don't get me wrong, especially in the early days and you're talking to yourself, you're replying to all these people, no one comes back to you, right? And you're just like, oh, I'm just like spending all these hours talking to myself, but it does eventually catch on. And you're right, it's the secret sauce. You can't grow without it. So Twitter aside, so you've got a Discord community as well?
Yep. So that's how we had our initial growth. And then, like I said, we realized late on that wasn't the best way to have started, but everything's a learning lesson. So I don't regret it.
You almost, though, when you started, you were almost a little bit more of an investor group, right? So, I'm sure it made sense at the time why you started on Discord.
Yeah. And I think what we really learned from this transition is we want to build a brand that isn't stuck in one platform. Like we want to build a brand that's internet wide, right? Like everyone knows the Gary Vee name. And I just don't think you can do that on Discord. There's no algorithm promoting you out to the world. And we realized we need to start creating video content. We need to start doing Twitter content. Let's just get good at one and hammer it down, and then we can move on. But we got to go somewhere else is what we realized. So we started with Twitter.
Yeah, I think Twitter's a great place to start. Like I say, it by far, in terms of like social media or any sort of social platforms like YouTube, anything like that, has the most sort of Web3 natives on it, which is crazy to me because before I sort of moved into the Web3 space, I didn't realize how big Twitter was. That sounds really stupid, but because I didn't use it personally, do you know what I mean? For me, Instagram was bigger or TikTok was big. I didn't realize that Twitter actually still had a huge audience,
Yeah. It's funny because I have people telling me that they want like Instagram over Twitter as well when we're on calls. And I'm like, well, like, let's actually look at the numbers of let's look at just the metrics of users in Web3 currently that are, actively engaging with the content. And it's by far favoring the Twitter side.
Yeah.
It's hard to build a Twitter audience. Sorry, Jojo, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that throughout this past, 6 months of just talking with, these people who have grown 75,000 followers in a year or 100,000 followers in a year on Twitter, you talk to these NFT influencers and you see that they do so much right. But then there's the crypto side where it's all tech. It's all tech. Let's not engage with the community. Let's not promote the community. And you see they struggle with growth. And then it's like, how can we find that balance? Bring tech and then bring, the community side and growth on Twitter. And how can we meet that in the middle to where you can have great technology, but also have a great community? Because I think it really does matter. And Twitter really showed me that. It showed me it was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So originally, what was the inspiration behind starting Cardinal House?
Jojo, you want to go ahead? Do you want me to take it?
Yeah, I can start us off. when we first started Cardinal House, it was a very different inspiration than it was now.
Yeah.
So Chris and I approached Zach, and he had another project in the crypto space at the time. And we approached him. And we were like, we really like what you're doing. We want to do a podcast. And Chris and I, our goal was like, we didn't understand anything Web3 at the time. So we were like, it would be so cool if someone could showcase these great projects. We didn't know what an AMA was. Don't get me wrong. There's obviously
I'll
things
say
that
like
do that.
we were not in we were not in the true DeFi space. So I had been, for a little over a year and a half, had been in blue chips and things like that, but it wasn't, any kind of smaller project, never even touched anything outside the top 50 to 100. So yeah, sorry, keep going, Jojo.
I was just saying, so we were like, okay, let's showcase these projects in a way that we can bring eyes to quality innovation in the space. So we're like, okay, let's start with the podcast. So we get on the podcast with Zach, who happened to be our first ever podcast. And we're talking to him. We're realizing we have values that are very similar. And we're telling him about our vision. And he's like, yeah, Cole, which is his brother who ended up being part of the core team. He's a developer. He was like, yeah, we have a similar vision. How about we just do it together? And that was like that statement. We just ran with it. And all of a sudden, Cardinal House started.
Yeah.
We all started putting time into it. We saw results and we pivoted a million times. But here we are today with something completely different. That all started with a little idea of let's work together and let's see where it goes.
No, it's been great to watch your guys' journey as well. From seeing you at the very beginning, like I think when we first joined your server, you had maybe like less than 100 members or something. So like super early on, and watching how you've sort of grown, and yeah, like you put out great content, like super interesting content on Twitter. It's really great to have seen you guys learn as you go as well, because we're all learning every day, right? And I think when someone can actually say, do you know what, we want to pivot a little bit, we feel like this would do well, or we've got strengths here, there's no shame in that. I think some people are like, oh, I must stick with my first idea and we must make this work, when actually if it's not working, why not change it slightly? You absolutely should.
Yeah, and I think our motto for this past 10 months has been fail fast and fail hard, because you learn a lot when you fail. And we failed a lot in the first 8 months, but now we found something that stuck, right? We threw a ton of things against the wall, just looking for something to stick. And now we find something that stuck. Now it's all about revising and improving on what we have, because it's been working for the past 2 months. So we're building on that and taking that momentum. Like you said, momentum is huge, riding that into 2023.
Yeah. What would you say your biggest failure was?
Ooh, we actually had a podcast on all of our failures, to be fair. Like we did a podcast and we talked about every single failure. Chris, can you highlight?
It's hard to say. Yeah, it's hard to say what the biggest one was. There are a lot, and like ranging from massive things like just massive things that we've started, all the way down to just like learning lesson, and like taking away lessons from the smaller pieces. Some of the larger ones one of the largest ones for sure is starting on Discord. And that is definitely one of the largest mistakes as far as our growth has been. But I think most of it just comes down to lack of business experience. Like I said, like we started off as 4 founders, right? Jojo and I are brothers, Cole and Zach are brothers. And like I was the oldest one on the team. And I was 22 when we started, and it's been about a year now. Jojo was 17 when we started. He's the youngest one on the core team.
You are young, Jojo. You're making me feel old. I didn't know you were brothers either. That's nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's why, it took us a second to kind of figure everything out and get our bearings and understand why, like you hear all these things from people like Gary Vee that you kind of referenced, and Alex Hormozy, and they say all these lessons, and you try and think like, oh yeah, we're applying them in this way. But I don't think realistically you learn a lot of that stuff until you actually do it and see look at what you can't apply a lot of it. Like people say, hey, niche down and focus. And then you're like, oh yeah, we're focused, right? We have this one thing, and then it's connected to these other 17 things. But they're all connected, so it's really just one thing. But then you actually look at it, and it's like, no, there's just no way you have the bandwidth for 17 different ideas. And just things like that. That is another one of the lessons, right? Making assumptions is another. Just coming up
I
with
have another
plans.
practical example.
Go
And
ahead.
they made fun of me yesterday for saying this, but so Alex Ramosi talks about leverage, right? And doing high leverage activities, especially being an owner. You have to start with low leverage activities, learn the skill, and then to where you can teach the skill, and then you can manage the skill, right? And I said something along those lines yesterday. They started calling me Jojo Hermosi, and I think that has really stuck with us, right? Like if you can't do the skill yourself, why are you expecting to be able to teach someone to do it? And if you can't teach someone to do it, how can you manage it, right? You have to go in stages of learning the lowest leverage skill, working your way up to the middle ground, and then delegating, right?
Yeah. I think we lost him. But yeah, exactly, Jojo. Yeah, he had said something that was to the effect that you have to start off with, like, you start off a business and you're doing really, really low leverage activities. And what that means is you're putting in a lot of time and effort into getting little to no results. And then as those leverage activities start to increase, or you get into higher leverage stuff, I think he may have disconnected completely. But if as you get into higher leverage things, you start to do a little bit of work for a lot of results. And so it's like it's slowly making that transition, but you first have to learn how to do it and then teach people to do it and then start to scale it. And then, so it's like, yeah, like Jojo was kind of saying before he cut out, that's definitely a big piece, but it's been an exciting journey.
Well, it looks like we've lost Jojo now as well. This is going well today. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I think one thing you've seen a lot with like the rise of the internet and social media and this accessibility to an audience is a lot of people claiming to sort of be experts in a lot of things, but they don't sit back and, like you say, take the time, start at the bottom, you know, and it might not feel like it's a great return and stuff at the beginning, but you build up and you get there. So yeah, I think it's interesting to see how social media and how, you know, Twitter and stuff has changed businesses and actually the value they can add and things for their customers essentially, right? So what did you do before Cardinal House?
So, I mean, I can speak on a couple of the team members. I know Cole, he's a developer, right? He does that on his own, or not on his own. He does it with another company in the Web2 world. Zach did a lot of Amazon sales before getting into everything here. So he did a lot of that, which is kind of slowed down a good amount because of how time consuming Cardinal House is. He was doing it at like a very successful level beforehand. I was in school and I kind of just graduated as we started up Cardinal House. So I graduated like a little over a year ago now. And I was funny story. I came from something completely unrelated. I was in the health and fitness field. I was a personal trainer for a few years. I, went into massage therapy and helped with injury rehab and that kind of thing. And then I was in chiropractic school for a trimester before dropping out of that to focus on Cardinal House full time. Because when we started up Cardinal House, I did 3-4 months of Cardinal House and then started up school. And after that first 3-month period of time, I was like, there's no way I can do this while being in school. And so decided to drop the school part and completely hone in on Cardinal House and then the business of what we're doing.
Yeah. So all of the team members do Cardinal House full time now?
Aside from Cole. So of the original founders, Cole also has his other job. But yeah, Jojo, Zach, and I are all full time in here. Spending morning to when we go to bed, just working, because there's a lot to get done, and especially at the rate we're trying to learn and scale at, it's very time consuming, as I know you know.
Yeah. Do you know one thing? If I could go back, like to your guys' age, so sort of like pre-kids, I would have spent a lot more time working a lot smarter than I probably did. And I feel like you see that a lot more now because you see because of the internet was around when I was that age. Like, I'm not that old, Jesus, but Like things like and stuff, like whilst they were around there, and they've grown exponentially since, right? And so you have this absolute access to like podcasts, videos, you know, even like articles, blogs, where you can learn like anything, right? You can learn anything. You can make connections with anybody that you want. Like I was recording a podcast before, and we were talking about how hi Jojo, you're back. Yeah, sorry, I was recording
right now. I'm having issues all over the place.
That's all right. I was having an issue with my computer as well. So everyone is having tech issues today. Where was I? Yeah, and we're saying how like online you can literally make connections globally, right? And suddenly you're making friends and business network like partners online. And people then become critical to whatever it is that you're doing. And I feel like sort of 10 years ago when I was your guys' age, that wasn't as big a thing. It wasn't as accessible as maybe it is today. So I think, you know, the opportunity is 100% out there. And if you've got, you know, the drive in you to just work those hours, like get on with it, learn what you need to do. You know, there's the opportunity for everybody, right? And you guys are showing that, you know, you're working hard and you're doing well. So
it's a good start. It's a good start. We got a ways to come still.
Yeah, well, every day's a school day, right? Just keep working. Do you think you'd want to go back to like a normal 9 till 5? Do you think you would struggle with that now?
Jojo, you can probably start off on that.
Yeah, so I got you guys back. I apologize. My power just went out for some reason. But I do not think I ever will go to a 9 to 5. I don't plan on going to college. I've seen once you see the light, you can't go back. I feel like once you see all the possibility, the opportunity, you've learned some skills, you find ways to make money that you never realized were even possible before. So it's like, I have no doubts that if Cardinal House failed, if everything we're doing now failed, Chris and I could start another business and we could be doing well, right? Which I have no plans in that happening. I don't see that happening with Cardinal House at all. But I'm just thinking, I don't think I'll ever have to do a 9 to 5 again, just based on the skill sets we've learned this past year. So the answer is probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're saying like dialing back into 10-hour a day work day. Is that kind of what you're getting at, or?
Well, both, I suppose. I think it was more like, I've been freelance for nearly 5 years, and I've, you know, done multiple things in that time, and I can't imagine ever going back to a normal job. Don't get me wrong, I miss the structure that you get with it sometimes that you obviously don't get running your own business. I miss getting up at like 7 a.m. with a purpose, not just because my kids have woken me up. So I think that, you know, there's benefits of the 9 to 5. Like you do have that routine, right? And that structure, which is really difficult to find that work-life balance when you are, you know, running your own thing. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't go back. I would really struggle now. And like you say, if what I was doing now didn't work, I would just do something else. There would be something out there that I know would succeed, and I would, you know, make money that way, like you say. So
yeah, I think what you said, the work-life balance is extremely difficult. People are like, oh, you run a business, you get to choose your hours. And I'm like, well, actually your customers, your clients, your community chooses your hours for you. If they need you, you have to be present, or else your business is going to fail. So I'm just like, the balance is not there. And you have to be so intentional about, these are hours for me that I'm going to spend away. And I'm still going to be able to manage. I'm still going to be checking my phone, even in the hours I spend away. Like, I never am off my phone, like Discord. Even if I'm out, I'm like, I got to be checking to make sure there's no fires going down right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like Danny and I were talking about this week, actually. And it's funny because you've got a bit more flexibility in terms of, you know, you can say no to a meeting at a certain time if you really wanted to, or, you know, you might be able to go out for lunch. Whereas if you were stuck in an office all day, you couldn't do that. But you definitely work more hours. Like you wake up, so we wake up at about 6 a.m., 6:30, and through till like 10, 11 o'clock at night, even if you're not on your laptop, like it's on your phone, right? Or you're thinking about it, you're thinking about the next idea, or you might get, you know, a sudden idea for content and you want to jot it down before you forget. And, you know, it is like, for me, it's 24/7. And I think, people have this idea that you have like this flexibility, and you do to a degree. But there's a lot of sacrifice behind that as well. I'd say there's certainly more sacrifice than there is flexibility for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard thing to find a balance with. I know in the past month or so, we've been a lot more intentional about being able to establish, especially as we've been hiring, establish a culture where people feel comfortable not having to do that, because not everyone is built for that or has like not everyone wants to work 60, 80, 120 hours or 100, 120 would be kind of insane, but 100 hours a week in whatever they're doing. And that's okay. Like, I don't want anyone to feel like they need to, right? And if you do want to, then I'm happy to work with you on that, on whatever level you want. But yeah, it's something that we've been trying to, especially as founders of like a startup, and we're learning. And the fastest way to fail fast is to just do a lot of stuff very, very, very quickly. So just throwing ourselves in it, trying to, make these mistakes as fast as we can. I think like that is just it's a hard thing to master, but it's something we're definitely trying to learn and figure out right now.
Chris, and you nailed it when you said that you don't have to work 60, 80, 100 hours a week. And we're realizing that with leverage, right? If you're getting the same amount of work done in 40 hours that you could in 80 previously, that's how you have to do it. You have to buy back time, learn skills that give you more leverage, give you better results in a shorter amount of time. That way you can free up some time. So we've learned that, and that's been huge. And we're really trying to make the shift. But that's a big, big shift to delegate and to actually learn skills that give you leverage over your time.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've always been a really big advocate, and this probably, comes from my previous career. So I started in sales. And one of the key things there was you should work smart. Like, the person working until 10 p.m. at night and staying late in the office wasn't the person doing the most deals. They weren't getting the most clients. They were just working the longest. And actually, people that were working smarter and managing to leave closer to normal time were doing better, because they were just managing their times better. They'd found ways of, like you say, getting more for their time. They didn't have to put in as much effort. Well, effort's probably the wrong word, probably still as much effort, but just in a more concise way. Know what you're doing, know what the impact and the results are going to be from that, and manage it that way. And I think, when you're running your own business, that's something that might need adjusting from time to time. It's something that you might have to change, or sometimes accept that actually some weeks that's going to happen, right? You're just going to have to suck it up and work those hours that week, like you say, like seeing fires going off. Like, I remember very, very like early days of MDB. It was in the pre-launch days, and something was kicking off in the Discord, and I'd met my friend for lunch, and I hadn't seen her in ages, hadn't seen her. And then this thing started like kicking off in this Discord, and we didn't have a community manager or anything at the time. Just the core team, just the founders. And I had to just say, sorry, I can't sit and have lunch. I need to sort this out. And sometimes you're going to have to, right? But I think most of the time you can definitely, like you say, with the leverage thing, try and manage your time a bit better, try and find efficiencies, I suppose, in what you're doing, right? And so
yeah, I definitely think that's a piece. And I think the other half of that is none of it matters if your time that you buy back doesn't go back into either developing your own skill set to continue to buy, to get more time back or be more efficient in your own tasks, or if you don't use that for some kind of, higher leverage activity in the business. Because if you just bought back 40 hours of your time a week and you don't do anything with it, then the same tasks are getting done. The only thing different is you're now paying somebody, or paying for some tech, or doing another process. So there's no benefit to it if you're doing that, aside from you do get your hours back. But you have to spend those wisely to try and continue to make things more efficient. And then you end up getting to a point where you're trying to buy back employees' time and trying to help them start to grow their skill set and things like that, because that is super, super high leverage. If you can, manage a team, that's just such a big piece.
Yeah. I think one thing that I know from experience when you're talking about like employees and buying back your time is, I think it can be really difficult to delegate when it's your own business, right? Because it's your baby, it's your thing. And I feel like because you've got such a clear vision, because it is your vision, it can be difficult to let that go, I think, sometimes, and actually say to someone else, actually, do you know what, you can take the reins with this, and step back. I feel like as a business owner, that's something that's quite difficult to do at times.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we've had our struggles with that. And for me, I think when you delegate and you see the job not getting done as well as you would do it, it's really hard. And you have to find the right balance, right? You can't delegate too early because then the job isn't going to get done well, or you don't know how to teach it well enough to where it can get done well. But then you also can't delegate too late because then you're not maximizing the potential of scaling your business because you could be doing something higher leverage. So it's such a balance to find. And I think balance is a great word to describe business. Is like everything is trying to find that balance between taking too much time off work and too little time off work. Delegating too much or delegating too little, or spending too much on marketing or spending too little. It's like everything is a balance in business. And it's all about trial and error and figuring it out, plus taking in what people say, taking in good input, and then applying that and learning even faster.
Yeah.
Jojo, I love that piece that you kind of touched on as far as you have to, I mean, and you've touched on it a couple times already, but you have to learn a skill before, fully before you can start to pass it on to the next person. So not kind of putting someone in a position too early is optimal. Like you can't just scale everything in one day. And that's like Alex Hormozi talks about. And he makes these comparisons, right, to building an actual building. I don't want to take credit for anything that isn't just my idea, but so I reference him and Gary Vee and others so much. But for example, he talks about building a business is like building a building, right? The deeper you build the roots, the higher up the building can be built. Like when they start to build a skyscraper, they started off underground. Like you are at the lowest point. You are below everybody else. It's just on the ground level. And you need to do that for the stability and integrity of the building. And the same thing is true for business. Like you have to go into the lowest, depths of your skill set and understanding how to, do the lowest leverage activities before you can actually train somebody in that area, if you want them to be the best that they can be in that, in that area as well. So it takes time. If you do it too early, it's kind of like building a weak foundation for your business. And sure, they can strengthen it too, but the odds of them caring enough to actually do that in your business is very low. And it's just coming to that realization. They don't have the same reasons. They don't have the same incentive as you to do that. And that's okay. Like they shouldn't have the same incentive, right? You guys aren't equal owners, and that's okay. And I think it's such a big piece that people don't think about. They try and rush into their business. They're like, hey, it needs to be done in the next 3 years. But it's like, realistically, if we're talking at like the size that you're trying to scale your business to, if it happened in 10 years, is that a problem? Like if you're trying to make, $10 million a year, $100 million a year, is the fact that it took an extra 7 years really the problem? Like you were going to be fine either way. And so you might as well set the foundation in a way that you can scale it. And it doesn't just fall on its face, because once the culture is dead, or once, the skill set, foundation is set, it is a lot more time consuming and a lot more work than, you might as well have to restart like everything you're doing, because you got to rebuild the entire operation. But I think that's a really, really big piece that you touched up on, Jojo.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I've seen that analogy before. Without a strong foundation, nothing succeeds, right? It's like you say, with a building or a house, without that solid beginning, it's just not going to last.
Yeah.
And yeah, rushing things, I think it's so like tempting to just think, like, you know what, I'll make this much money and I want to make it by this day, and really trying to almost rush this process. And you've just got to let it take its time. And I think you'll know when you're ready for the next step, or like if you're a really small business, you'll know when you're ready for your first employee, or for your first, if you're trying to grow your first, say, investment round or something. You'll know when that time is right. And if you try and do that too soon, you ultimately probably fall flat on your face, unfortunately. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's a great analogy.
And I think it takes falling on your face a few times to realize that like, you have to learn. You have to be put in sucky situations to realize things sometimes, and you don't really learn from success. You learn from failures, and it's so true. What you just said, you have to fail to even begin to realize that, it takes more time. than I had thought. Like I had assumed that this is how things were going to work in the business world. And your assumption is just so far off from the way, it's proven to you that it's off over you actually trying it and seeing that the data doesn't back what I was claiming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important as well to remember that I think, what was it, something like 95 or 99 or 90 something, like crazy high amount of small businesses fail in like the first year. And I think the reason for that, a big reason for that, is because people face their first falling flat on their face, right? They fall flat on their face for the first time. And then they're like, I can't do this. Like, it's failed. I don't know what to do. And I think actually pushing through those failings is what builds, a stronger leader in yourself and then a stronger business as a result of that. I think that's one crucial thing is people don't expect to fail. They don't, accept that actually it's probably a very normal part of building a business. Huge businesses never got one thing wrong. Of course they did. Multiple times, didn't launch a product that didn't sell, or release a video or a podcast that nobody cared about, or someone got offended by. Like there's always going to be things that you're going to have to face and ultimately, become a better business leader for it.
And one of the things that I like to stress is expectation management. If you go into a business and people like setting these high expectations of like, this year I'm going to make $1 million. If you don't reach that, you're going to be hurt. You're going to feel like, oh, I didn't accomplish anything. You're going to quit, right? What we do is we set low expectations, and we have high goals, but low expectations, to where like, these are our goals of where we're going to be 10 years from now, but we're not going to set certain parameters or expectations of we need to hit this by this. We're going to be like, oh, whatever we do hit, that's just, well, we're grateful for that. We're blessed to have hit that, but we're not going to expect it to where if we don't hit it, we're not going to be hurt. We're going to realize, oh, we got one step closer, right? We're closer than we were. That's a win, right? If you start looking at everything as a win and stop expecting things and then being hurt by losses, it's like all of a sudden your business is just getting one step closer every day. And it's like, oh, just because I didn't get 10 steps closer this year, I got 5 steps. I still am way closer than when I started. So I think expectations.
Like something Gary Vee, I want to touch on that point and then hit back on Mina's point. But Gary Vee also talks about the fact that everything, like every decision he goes into, he expects it to be the wrong decision. He expects it to fail. And so he talks about valuing the speed of the decision more than the outcome of the decision, because he says that he just feels like when it is right, he's like, okay, it's a lucky break, it just happened to be right this time. But he expects every decision he makes to be the wrong one and kind of moves forward like that. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because then you stop basing things off assumptions and you stop overthinking decisions, and you can actually be driving action versus driving ideas. And then back to your point, Mina, I think you were talking a little bit more about, if I can remember it, I'm gonna have to come back to that. But yeah, I think that the Gary Vee point is something super big that I don't think a lot of people think like that. Oh, I do remember what I was gonna say. Like you had talked a little bit about starting off a business. People don't expect to fail, right? And I think the big thing is people hear that and they're like, oh, well, I'm coming in, I expect that I'm gonna have my failures here and there. They go and they put a lot of money into the front side of the business, and they don't think about, hey, this business model might be the problem. Like my whole idea might be the problem. So they expect to fail in small ways, but they don't expect that, the entire business model is completely wrong. And then they end up figuring, oh, I shouldn't even have a brick and mortar location. Shoot, like, what do I do now? Well, you just lost a lot of money because you just, spent money to get that time, or rent it out, the time to remodel it, the money to remodel. And then you just you end up at a loss. And so people a lot of times question the things that they don't need as much help. Like they'll question the small things, but they have these very big limiting beliefs that they don't actually start to question. And that goes into when they ask for advice too, they're like, hey, should I do this or this? And you're like, hold up, let's take a step back. How are you even getting to these two options? Because your whole model is flawed, right? It doesn't matter if you do this or this, because either one is going to have, you're going to have a really tough time because of, the steps that you even made, the beliefs that you even held to come to the conclusion that there was only two options. That's the problem. It's not just the fact that, you have to pick one of these two. And so I think a lot of people, and I'm not as, that's probably not the most eloquent way to say that, but But yeah, I think a lot of people forget to question the beliefs that they hold closest. The things that you assume are true 100% are
Yeah.
usually ones you have to take a little bit deeper of a look at to ensure that they really are true.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, you absolutely have to scrutinize everything, right? And that includes yourself. You have to, if you've got this business model, you need to like run through it, right? Run through it in detail. Ask someone else to look at it. Run through it again. Like you have to keep going back and keep questioning yourself and think, actually, is this the right thing? You need to then compare it. Like you can't, like you say, if you've only given yourself 2 options, right? Are you massively discounting and actually, almost taking this super narrow approach that you're cutting yourself off from other opportunities, right? So I think that, there's a whole host of things, and a lot of it, like you say, sort of touch on your point a bit, I think it comes from self-awareness, from self-reflection, and, really having the awareness, I suppose, to be able to sit there and say, actually, okay, this is flawed and this is why it's flawed, and this is failing or this will fail and this is why it is. And I think actually if you can get yourself to a point, and this could take years, right? This could take years of experience, or it might come naturally to some people. And if you can get yourself to a point where you can look at something and you can, look at it really critically yourself, you can almost, predict those failures before they happen. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're learning and you're being aware of the bigger picture here. And like you say, like it's a really binary thing, giving yourself, these 2 options that you probably haven't really watched that much. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that comes to the point of how do you grow a business? Well, I think you grow a business by growing your personal character first. That comes down to leadership, and just being a model of your culture, right? Like in yourself. And we've really learned that financial development is all about personal development. And that's why entrepreneurs are so big on talking about personal development. There's so many books about it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's all about changing your beliefs and who you are. And we've really realized that, right? Like, how can we expect to launch a super successful business if we don't have great habits? If we're not a man of our word, like if we say something and we don't do it, or we tell someone I'm going to do this by this date and you don't follow through, if you don't have that character, you're never going to launch a successful business. So it starts with working on yourself and going from there.
Yeah, I listened to another podcast of it. It might have been a Tim Ferriss one actually, and one of the things that they were talking about was this book, and this book was basically the same. I think it was 11 questions, and they'd gone and asked multiple entrepreneurs the same 11 questions, and the things that they all had in common weren't business related. They weren't. They would all get up, and he said all of them did some form of, say, meditation, for example, or whether that was actual meditating or they sort of got that through running or exercise. They all had certain things that they did that were personal goals actually. And it's just really interesting that they're entrepreneurs, so you'd expect them to have some sort of business savviness or something about them that sort of was aligned between them all, but it wasn't that side of things at all. It was the personal things actually. saw the crossover. So yeah, I completely agree. It's about self-development and really, personal, who you are as a person, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people forget that a lot of the key things that, successful individuals have in common are not necessarily the beliefs and values of how, what is the optimal way to do this. There's no secret to that, but it's a lot of the character traits, like being able to delay your gratification, being able to, do something for an exceptionally long period of time without having, that fear hit. And I think like one of the examples of that is making sure like any kind of testing you do, any sample size has to be ridiculously large so that you actually know that you're hitting that audience, right? But there are a lot of things people don't realize, like, and you hear some people talk about it all the time, like this is the only, this is the best way to go get leads, or this is the best way to build this kind of business. And in reality, there's a lot of really, really good ways to do it. And any of them work. Like there's a million ways to build $1 billion business. A lot of them aren't discovered yet, and a lot of them just haven't been done consistently for a long enough period of time yet. And I don't think people think about the fact that there's a lot of ways to make money and a lot of ways to to do a lot of these different things and find success. It's just a matter of starting it and doing it for a long enough period of time so that you can actually, build whatever, processes and whatever business it is that you're trying to do. But I do think like it's not so much about the specific planning as much as it is about those beliefs about the world and those skill sets and then the character traits that really, really matter.
Yeah, Chris. We've been talking about this a lot this week, and I think this is like a really, really valuable point as far as character development. And we've really realized this a lot recently through watching a ton of content plus seeing it ourselves, right? Every successful business owner, I can't make that assumption, but most have the mindset of abundance, right? Like they have a mindset of abundance versus scarcity. There's always more money that can be made. There's enough money to go around. And if you don't have that mindset, you get scared. You fear not making enough money. You don't think you can create more money. And the thing we've learned is if you have enough experience, enough knowledge, enough skills, you can draw money out of what seems like thin air. People will throw money at you to get your skill set, to get your service, to use your business, right? Like having that mindset of I can spend $5 on a coffee because I know I'm going to make a lot more. Not I need to save every single penny I have because money is scarce, right? So just having that abundance mindset of we can create more, there's more that's going to come. Let's just enjoy and realize that we can create more. Not we gotta fear and we gotta hold on to everything we have and really be scarce and save money is how we're going to get rich, because I think that's a misconception the world has.
I want to add I 100% agree. And I think there's one caveat there's one thing I'll clarify. That doesn't mean go and spend every dollar that you ever make immediately, right? But what it does mean is don't be afraid to spend it. Like fear should not be the guiding decision on whether you're spending money or not. The logic behind, hey, is this within my means to spend should be like, if you only have $1,000, don't go spend $1,000 on, the newest piece of technology that you want. But it means that, hey, yeah, like you said, Jojo, if you want to, one of those activities that you could say is higher leverage is ordering, takeout, having it dropped off at your door every day. If you have the money for that, don't be so, stingent on the fact that, I want to save every single dollar I make, because saving the money isn't going to be how you, develop those skill sets and things like that. Don't be afraid to pay for, courses. Don't be afraid to learn the skills at a cost. Don't be afraid to develop relationships over coffee or go out to eat or things like that. I think that those are the pieces that, as far as the mentality of abundance versus scarcity, I think that those are some of the pieces. But again, I just want to clarify, like, having some kind of money hygiene is important to have, but I think that just comes with everything else. Is like you start to learn there's a balance to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I was having a chat with a friend, and we were having a bit of a conversation about this and how certainly with like the cost of living and everything, there is this real like budget mindset, I think, at the moment, and it's how can I save money on my bills and how can I cut the costs of my food shop, and should I cancel my Netflix subscription and all of this. And for me, the way to become wealthy isn't to save £10 or dollars or whatever on your Netflix subscription. It's to think, okay, how can I go and make more money? Do you know what I mean? It's not about okay, I'm got $500 and I've all of my bills cost $500, so I've got nothing, so I'm going to cancel Netflix, so I've got $10. Go and get that $10 from somewhere else.
We talked about this.
That's so funny.
We talked about this. And I think the biggest reason why I'd say getting rid of Netflix can be good is that you have more time to focus on those higher leverage activities if you're not spending on, like, if it's a distraction. Exactly. And you don't have self-control at all. But I agree. Like, there are a lot of things that you could say are worth it, right? If you want to watch a movie every week or want to, do something along those lines.
Yeah,
for sure. Sorry, Jojo, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, for me, I love getting coffee once or twice a week. And it's like, I don't care about spending $5 or $10 on coffee because I value those relationships and the people I go and get coffee with and just have conversations, and it builds my character and it builds who I am. And I just enjoy it. Like, it's my time to relax. So if you're spending money on doing things you love and you have that mindset of I'm going to be able to make more money, don't cut the things out of your life that you love that make you, work so well because you get your time off and now you come back with a great mindset, right? Like that's making you more productive. Why cut that out of your life? Why not, like you said, make more money, stop trying to save every penny. You know what I mean? And like no one ever talks about that. And it's frustrating because they always assume that you're stuck. And most people are. In 9 to 5, you can't raise your earning potential in one day, right? Like, or even
You
1
can.
week.
I have to disagree there, Jojo, because I think you can. You can go and offer to walk the dogs in your neighborhood, right? You can go and clean someone's house on a Saturday morning. Yeah, there are things that you, and don't get me wrong, they're not going to build you this great business. Like, I agree, you don't have time to do that around 9 to 5 necessarily, but you can. There are still ways that you can, try and build that wealth. Going back to like the Netflix thing, if I save $10, I've still only got $500 a month, right?
Yeah.
If you go and earn more, you could have 600, 700.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think my point was more so that, like, let's say a business that hires you to work a 9 to 5, you can't raise your earning potential there as easily as you could doing a side hustle, right? Like, yes, that's what I was saying. But yes, you can do things on the side that can raise your earning potential. And I think that's how a lot of business owners start, is they do side hustles and they realize they can make more doing the side hustle than they can make at their normal job. So then it's just like,
you hear of that a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
I always ask entrepreneurs or business owners, I was like, how did you start doing this? Because I find it fascinating. It's always super interesting people, and every single one of them is like, well, I had this idea and I started doing it on the side, and then I realized this is making me a lot more money than like my corporate office job or my, my 9 to 5, whatever that might be. So yeah, you're right. It's funny. Things do start like that, don't they? Frequently, actually.
Yeah.
How did you get started?
Me?
By the way. Yeah, now let's
so I went freelance out of necessity. What like it wasn't really a choice. And I think this seems to be, the situation with a lot, like where people start as a side hustle and then they make more money. So they're sort of, almost forced into it because it's better money. And so I was working in sales. I had like quite a corporate job after uni for years. And then I had my little boy, and having a baby did not fit in with like this corporate sales job. You just can't do it. You can't do the hours. Childcare doesn't allow for it. Like, childcare is so expensive in the UK as well. And so I was like, right, okay, so I can't do this job anymore. So my options were go and take a much lower level job on a much smaller salary that would fit in around childcare, but it probably wouldn't even cost the childcare, like cover the childcare cost, to be fair. Or I can go self-employed. And I had this bit of a social media side hustle for maybe 2 years at this point. So I was like, okay, I'll just take that full time. Like, I sort of had no choice really, just because of having a baby and trying to work is not very easy sometimes, particularly. I don't know what it's like. I think some countries are a lot more flexible with like childcare help and returning to work and stuff. The UK, I think, it's probably improved a little bit since the pandemic, but at the time, it wasn't going to work. So that's how I ended up being self-employed. And then I ended in Web3 because of Danny.
How do you know? Do you know him in real life?
Danny and I are together. Didn't you know that?
I didn't know that. Did you know that, Chris?
No.
I had no idea. The more you learn every day. That's funny.
There we go. That's what you've learned today. Every day's a school day. Yeah, no, we're together in real life. So
okay. I had zero idea. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, no, we didn't tell people at first just because we didn't want it to have like an impact on our project. Obviously, as we docs and like with Foxify, everything's like obviously a bit more professional, a bit more proper. So we thought best to be upfront with people about that.
Gotcha.
I mean, I support the Alex Hermosi, Layla Hermosi combo. I like it. What was I gonna say? Do you have any questions? I think you do normally an hour, right? Do you have any questions to wrap it up?
Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. Question I ask everybody, just to put people on the spot a bit, is to list your 3 biggest inspirations. So the 3 people that have inspired you.
We've been talking about people all day.
We're gonna have like the same list. Okay, 3 biggest people that have served as inspirations. That's gonna be a tough one for sure. Alex Hermosi's on the list. Number 2, I'd have to say Gary Vee's on the list. Number 3 is, I say it's tough because there's a lot of other people that I consume content around and I learn from. And it might be, shoot, that is a really, really, really tough one. Honestly, one of the pieces that has been really influential as far as my self like development as a person interacting with others is probably like Charisma on Command. Even like that, like their channel is very, very solid, and that got me through that. And that I don't consume a lot of the content anymore, but that got me through. Tom Billy is another one, but the Charisma on Command got me through a lot of high school into college and being comfortable because I'm very, very introverted, and so the only way that I started being able to get out of my comfort zone and really start to get out there was through starting to consume some of their content and feel, slowly start to experiment and feel more comfortable going and doing that. Because then I was a personal trainer, right? So and I taught group fitness where I'm like yelling in front of a whole class. So I was comfortable with that, but it took a little bit to gain some of those skills to be able to do that comfortably at least. But yeah.
Yeah, and for me, Alex Hormozi, Chris kind of got me into consuming his content. I've learned a lot from him. Iman Gaji, I don't know exactly how to say his last name, but more recently I've consumed a ton of his content because it's very agency specific. And it's like he's in the same position we are. He's 23 years old. He started his agency at like 18, or no, I think it was 16. And now he makes himself profit like $1 million profit a year. Wow. And his agency does like 15 million a year in revenue. And he basically he's documented the journey from 14 years old to 23 now. And it's like, it's powerful because it's like our whole process could be exactly like his if we learn from his experience. So I'm really diving into that. And then lastly, probably a personal mentor. Cam, I don't know if you know Cam Fulton, but he's a really good
definitely
mentor on the personal side. I talk to him once a week, and he runs an agency, an SEO agency that's pretty successful. He's a great guy to talk to as far as how can we scale our agency, because he's done it before, and I have access to him every week. We're good friends.
He's phenomenal.
Cool. Yeah, great answers. I think on the surface that question seems quite simple, but actually when you're thinking about it, it's a bit more difficult than it seems.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about like mentors. I was thinking more about like consuming content too. But yeah, there's too many people to name because some of them have just like shaped my skills from before, and I wouldn't be able to pick up any information now without them. And so it's like, 100%. It's a tough one.
Definitely. Well, thanks so much for joining me, both of you. It's been great to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, it's been a great episode, to be fair. It's probably the most different to some of the other ones where it's so business related. So I think that's great. I think, giving me Gary Vee vibes. So.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Hopefully 5 years from now, we are as big as Gary Vee. That's the goal.
Remember me when you're as big as
Gary. We'll have to learn some of that Instagram stuff from you.
That's what I was gonna say. I'll trade Twitter knowledge for Instagram knowledge.
Instagram is my forte, which is unfortunate in Web3 and DeFi. But to be fair, the Twitter's not doing too bad. I think we've got like 11.5 thousand on MDB now. So not bad. Yeah, I'd like it to be bigger, and I'm working on it. I've got some strategies I need to implement in coming weeks.
Set up a chat.
Yes, you
Let's
guys
do it.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining, and I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds
awesome.
Good.
Have a good one.